baby, don't mess around because she loves me so, and this I know for sure. But does she really wanna, but can't stand to see me walk out the door. Don't try to fight the feeling, cause the thought alone is killing me right now. Thank God for mom and dad for sticking together, cause we don't know how. Just don't get it if there's nothing at all. We've been together, oh, we've been together, but separate's always better when there's feelings involved. It's what they say is nothing is forever. Then what makes love exception? So why, oh, why, oh, why, oh, why,
perimeter there just a bit. I do see some kind of sealer near the bolts, so it's possible those have some kind of thread sealer on them. We will double check what we're supposed to install those with. But as of right now, just get this cleaned up and get it off of there. Let's see. Yeah, 13 millimeters. That's a 1/4 inch drive though, we don't have that. We are going for the 13 mil. So, don't know how we swapped that around. Anyway, go ahead and these shouldn't be, I'm just imagining these aren't probably more than 15 foot-pounds or so on the torque spec. So, just kind of break them all loose here. Now, we'll switch to our regular ratchet. See just how much sealer or whatever. Oh, this is sealer. Look at that. You can see just how much they got on there. So we'll have to clean those up real good, make sure we get an adequate amount back on those threads when we put these bolts back in. We will just be reusing these bolts. Don't see the harm in that.
Tell me what you see in me. Gotta be something different.
So as you can see, it's kind of just probably RTV'd in there just a bit. We are going to crack the seal here. I don't believe we're going to have any fluid spilling out at us. Yeah. Not bad. This guy did sitting there just like that. Got some gasket sealer. It's all over in there. So it's possible we'll need to run a bead just around the new one. Does have the new seal in there. However, this little boss for that bearing appears to be into this guy. So we need to try and get that out. We want to remove as much of this gasket maker Really, there's not a whole lot in here. It's pretty crazy to see this thing with the ability to wobble like that. You do want to be very careful not to get anything inside of here. Quite a bit of silicone right around the ring here. See if we can't get some of that off without going to the transmission. Replacing any gasket, but we will add a bit of RTD into there. Just want to make sure we get that surface really nice and clean. Okay, so get this cleaned up to a level that we're satisfied with. We will be running a bead of RTD along the perimeter here as well. We need to swap out the popped right on out there for us. So we will need to take this and no time like the present and to get some of that dirt that has just accumulated up and off of there. Don't want to lose any of this. It's got some kind of spacer in there as well. So this will essentially just place into here like that. We have cleaned up inside of here with our brake clean and a rag real good. We will clean up this surface one more time just before that final installation. If you look closely, you can see our spring inside of there. Comes pre-installed. And these, I believe this one either came from LMR or American Muscle. In case that bearing falls out again, I'm going to just take the precaution of having a nice clean surface for it to fall out onto. Just kind of gently spray that guy down there. Good enough. Clean this surface one last time. Now we'll just kind of set this off to the side on that clean towel there. So at this point we've got our bolts semi cleaned up, but we will get some wire brush. I just got this wire brush here. Should work fine. So I was looking for some vice grips, but I found some channel locks here. run that one through the die one time. Okay. I believe it's an M8 1.25. Back into that hole. Oh, all the way in, no problem. That's how the other ones were. So we might run those through the die one time, and the rest of them through the die one time. And then at that point we can reinstall. Bolt holes aren't going to just dump a bunch of junk in the back side, because they are just straight through the case there to the internal of the transmission. Here, for example, you can see it just goes all the way through the case. And it's the same down here. You can see my tool goes right into there. So pretty much it's just this lower one that has any of the silicone sealer in there, but it should be okay. Should be okay right about there, honestly. Not gonna be able to get much more of that out. I think the new thread sealer will kind of hold what's sitting there onto it. And we will be running this either way. We will be running this just a little bit and then doing a transmission flush on it, just swapping out the fluid. So now we'll essentially just throw some RTV on the new one, get that installed. So this is what we're looking at. Essentially, we reference to the Tremec P5. It's kind of odd, seeming that this is a Borg Warner. Oh well. Same spiel, I suppose. I'm going to guess here. So this is the calculation that we need to make, essentially. So calculate TS thickness of bearing preload, shims required as followed. So the TS will essentially be our shim thickness, is going to be equal to B minus A plus 0.03 of an inch, or plus 0.07 millimeters. So if we go to our diagram here on the left, you'll see that B, this is our bearing retainer, or the input shaft sleeve. B is the thickness of just the base of that, which we found to be right around 348 thousandths of an inch. And then for A, it's going to essentially be if we look down here, you'll see that the top line of A is only on one side. So it's referencing the distance from the trans case to essentially the top of 63. Which, if we look at 63, that's the bearing cup, which inside of our transmission is how far this bearing cup is going to protrude from the case. So we figured that to be right around 310 thousandths of an inch. The shim that we have inside already here, we measured this guy. That's sitting right about 40 thousandths of an inch. So our shim's 40 thousandths. We'll just keep that number to the side. For our equation, we'll take that, what we have here, which was the thickness essentially equals b minus a plus 3 thousandths of an inch. So b minus a is essentially going to be so 38 thousandths. And then when we take 38 thousandths and we add 3 thousandths, we get 41 thousandths of an inch. That 41 thousandths of an inch tells us how big of a shim that we need. The shim that we have is 40 thousandths of an inch. If we take into account the potential error in our measurement, then that puts us kind of right on where we need to be. So we can go ahead and continue to install that new bearing retainer. So the recommended amount of RTV to run to the sleeve, retainer, whatever you want to call it, they claim, and we are referring to the service manual, it's going to be a 1/16 of an inch or 1.6 millimeter bead of sealant all around transmission case, mounting face for input bearing retainer, center sealant bead between edges of face and circle bolt holes. Align index marks made at disassembly and install input bearing retainer. So essentially, if we were to have marked this guy, which no big deal because we know exactly how it is oriented, so it will go on like this. And we know we can just put this here for kind of future reference, most likely, more than anything. And if I can find the cap tube marker. So just want to make sure that our face is nice and clean there. And we will be using some of that Teflon sealant. Some of this stuff. The Permatex thread sealant with PTFE. We'll be using that on the bolts. Torquing them to about 15 to 20 foot-pounds. And we're only going to be using that just because these bolt holes, they do go all the way through the case there. So we don't want any trans leaks. Grab some RTV. Can never have enough RTV. Never know when you'll need it. So just have a little kind of hole squirting the RTV out there, which will kind of work in our benefit for this application here. Okay, we're going to call that good for the RTV. Got it kind of even as we can get it on there. That's what we got for what's left of our RTV there. But I think that's pretty good. We do have maybe one or two little low spots we should maybe address before kind of smack it on there. Okay, so for orientation, it's going to be the more rounded bulge. The more squared off bulge goes down, the more rounded bulge goes up. And we're just going to sink this in there. We will need to lift up on the input shaft a little bit just to get this to center out in the hole there. Might even need to tap it in there just a little bit. So, I'll take this guy and we'll just gently send her on home. Sitting nice and flush in there now. Take our nicely cleaned bolts and go ahead and coat these up with some of this thread sealer. Pretty good amount on these. I do not want to risk this leaking. However, it definitely doesn't need as much as it had when I put them on. But it is a good indication that this is a potential leaky spot that we need to definitely not forget the threads. Grab the torque wrench and we'll get this guy set to 15. Looks like it's already at 15 foot-pounds there. Just gonna snug these up a little bit. Torque this guy down. Go ahead and put these kind of evenly till we get to 15 foot-pounds. There's 15. There's 15. 15 and 15. I'll go ahead and hit those again. Just a little extra. I won't worry about torquing these any tighter. Probably no need. So, transmission sleeve installed. Put on the chain. So next, we have clutch fork. Okay, so next we do have this